This is the first meeting of the municipal year. We'll have to elect the chair and vice chair. So can I have a nomination for the chair, please?
I nominate Councillor Gould.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Right, just show of hands. All in favour of Councillor Gould? Lovely, that's carried. Can I have nominations for vice chair, please?
I nominate Councillor Bonney.
Is there a seconder? And a show of hands. Lovely, that's carried. Thank you.
Right. Good evening, members, and anyone online. And will be joining us in 10 minutes. I see from the chat. Welcome to the first formal meeting of an ordinary meeting of the PTPWG this year. The following staff are in attendance: Head of Place Joanne Johnson, Chief Planning Officer Kerry Williams, Team Leader for Planning Investigations Paul Casey, Planning Manager Policy Natalie Earle, Project Manager Policy for Stuart Watson, and Democratic Services Billy Outway. There is no planned evacuation tonight, so if the alarm goes, leave, don't use the lifts, and meet outside in the car park. I don't think anyone needs help. Are there any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. I have apologies of absence from Councillor Goldin, who's substituted by Councillor Kavanagh, Councillor Jays, who's substituted by Councillor Palmer, Councillor Watson, who's substituted by Councillor Wise, and apologies from Councillor Mike Whiten.
Thank you. Right, so we now move to item 5 minutes. We need to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 14th of March 24, and if we're happy to take them both together, extraordinary meeting held on the 8th of August 2024. Are members happy to approve those as correct records? Is there any dissenting voices? No. Oh. Councillor Baldock.
Yeah, I'm just wondering for clarity. As we've decided that we will allow substitutes on this body, is Councillor Whiting allowed to get a substitute from the group that nominated him? Going forward, that would be a useful thing to know one way or the other. Not that I expect you to know, but it needs to be referred to someone.
I'll pass that to Democratic Services to answer in due course. Yeah. Right, are there any declarations of interest? Good. So we move on to the first item, which is the Swale Planning Enforcement Strategy and the draft for adoption. And I ask Paul Casey to introduce the report.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is the Swale Planning Enforcement Strategy, the draft for adoption. And the purpose of this report is to invite members to review the updated draft planning enforcement strategy following the undertaking of a formal 8-week public consultation process between February and April this year. So an initial draft enforcement local plan was presented to PTPWG on the 25th of January. Officers updated the draft following member discussion, and it was then presented to Policy and Resources Committee on the 7th of February. At this meeting, it was resolved that the draft strategy proceed to public consultation. The draft is a refresh of a previous strategy adopted in 2021. The strategy intends to provide clarity on the scope, capacity and parameters of planning enforcement and to thereby effectively set expectations. The adoption of the planning enforcement strategy benefits customers by reassuring the public and other public bodies that effective and proportionate practices are in place. It provides for consistent and targeted enforcement activity whilst also supporting transparent and effective dialogue and understanding between the public, councillors and planning investigation officers. There have been several changes to legislation since the draft went to consultation, and these are highlighted in yellow with comments to aid members' review in the attached draft at Appendix 1. So the draft strategy, as I say, was the subject of a formal consultation for an 8-week period between the 26th of February and 22nd of April. And during this same period, the document was also displayed on the Swale Borough Council website, inviting the public to submit any comments. And the consultation was also promoted via social media. As a result of the formal consultation process, comments were received from 4 parish town councils, 1 councillor and 4 members of the public. The consultation responses and subsequent proposed revisions to the strategy are included as an Appendix 2. So consequently, committee are asked to review the comments received on the draft planning enforcement strategy and the proposed officer responses, and to provide any further comments. And then to recommend the updated draft strategy to Policy and Resources Committee for adoption. So, not to refresh the existing strategy is an alternative option, but the adoption of a refreshed enforcement strategy benefits customers by outlining effective practices, and it will develop a transparent and effective dialogue and understanding between the public, councillors and planning investigation officers. To accept some or none of the proposed amendments to the consultation draft, this is not recommended, as the proposed changes are considered to appropriately reflect comments received. So, on the revision of the planning enforcement strategy, you will see areas that have been highlighted in yellow, and they reflect changes in central government planning enforcement legislation. Importantly, the immunity from enforcement, paragraph 2.3. It used to be the case that development became immune after 4 years for operational development and a change of use of a building to a residence. So they've simplified things now. It's 10 years across the board. Before, it was 10 years for a change of use of land. For example, a caravan, residential caravan, was always 10 years. So now it's 10 years. But there is no time limit in respect of listed buildings, and enforcement action can be taken at any time. A few of the other changes made. There was some clarification onto types of development that will be investigated. That's at 3.2. We've added in there unauthorised work to hedgerows under hedgerow legislation. And 3.3, what we cannot investigate is dumping of waste. And we've added a note there stating that waste crime is dealt with by the Environment Agency. And the other change is at 5.1, priorities. A suggestion made by Parish Council that they will receive any complaints made by a parish council clerk will automatically receive a full investigation. So that's been added. Now it's ward members, MPs and parish council clerks. Right, so Appendix 1, terminology. Sections highlighted in yellow. There's now an enforcement warning notice that local planning authorities can serve. The temporary stop notice, that used to be 28 days from issue. Now it's 56 days, which is very welcome. And that's where, if we stumble across development that is unlikely to be granted permission, we can issue a temporary stop notice immediately at officer level. And yeah, those are the changes that were made. And of course, there's the Appendix 2, which was the comments received on the enforcement strategy. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Right, so we've got some questions. First of all, Councillor Baldock, and then Councillor Palmer, Councillor Hunt.
Yeah, it's on page 7 of a little document, page 15 of a big document. I thought we'd changed this so that decisions to take enforcement action would be sent to all members.
Yes, that's right. When we are deciding whether to take enforcement action, it would normally have been just the local members. Now that is going to be changed to all members going forward. So that will be updated.
So page 7 will be changed. Confirm that.
Yeah, I can confirm that.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Palmer.
Yeah, I'd just like to make an observation on 3.1 of the report. Anyone concerned about, it's the first paragraph really, about the development or activity, the easiest way to report a breach is through the online form. It might not be the easiest way. It might be a speedy way of doing it. Yeah. I have a lot of residents who say to me they just can't bear getting onto that form online. They have problems with it, so they normally email me and I forward the emails. Yeah. Maybe we should also put in there, probably change it from easiest to the quickest route to get this investigated or on into the system is to report online. However, if you can't, here's an email address you can email to or an address that you can send it to. Because we've got to try and include everybody, and not everyone is au fait with using IT. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for that. I take your comments on board. We do get, quite a few letters dropped in to reception, and they're acted upon. However, if they're anonymous, then in accordance with the strategy, they are disregarded unless it's quite clear that it's got the potential to develop into quite a serious breach. Quite possibly, a lot of these are possibly, neighbour disputes. So without any names, etc., in accordance with the draft document, those aren't investigated. But I will look into possibly adding our new planning investigations email address. That might be easier. And then any queries that come via that email address could be dealt with by our customer focus team in conjunction with my officers before we decide to set it up as a case. But it's definitely the easiest option is to go online, and but I am conscious of that. Not everyone is au fait with computers, so we will look at that again.
No, thank you for that.
Okay, thank you.
Should it really read best way on the grounds that it may be easiest for the planning department, but not necessarily easiest for the user, but it's the best way to get the information in a usable form?
Yes, and there's an audit trail as well, because when you report a breach online, you're given a reference number and it goes straight to the correct department. Instead of, for example, emailing an individual officer, they may be on leave, so if time's of the essence, it could just be sitting in the inbox. So it's always best that people are directed to that online facility. Thank you, Chair.
I think Councillor Hunt was next.
Thanks. I've got a question, then I'll come back if that's all right, because a lot of things in here seem to be probably parish councils that are saying about out of hours. And on page 29, it's got their concerns are raised about enforcement outside of office hours. And the response to that is out of hours provision will be considered going forward, but this is not within current budgets. Can I just get that clarified, that seems to say that nothing will be done out of hours, whereas my assumption is that something will be done. If something has to be done at a weekend, it will probably be done and investigated if that's when something's happening. Or are we saying that absolutely no evening or weekend work will be done?
Right. So at the moment, there is no provision for the planning enforcement function. It does not operate out of office hours, which is the same you'd find across most local authorities. They probably won't have the budget for it. What would normally happen is a person would ring in the out of hours number, leave a message, and it will be acted upon first thing Monday morning. But that is something that we would need to take up with, management, if there is to be an out of hours sort of on-call service, perhaps going forward, to tackle any breaches that occur on a Saturday or a Sunday or even a bank holiday. So
if I can come back, because that's what I think the confusion, where you said there that about out of hours being on call, which I can understand that. And that's what, when I've dealt with things in the past, there's been a report, let's say for instance, someone's cutting down a woodland over a weekend, and it's over certain weekends. If something comes in during that weekend to say that it's happening, I can understand there's nobody on call to go to that. But if it's something that's happening every weekend, are you saying that, say the next weekend, for instance, nobody will be going to that? Because it never happens during the week when someone's at work, and people doing those problems, causing those issues, will know that and will get around it. So it just needs some clarification. From what I've always understood, although we say that there's nobody on call at certain hours, there should be something at some point that goes out if it's ever needed. So can we just be absolutely sure? Are we saying there's nobody available, or is it just there's nobody on call at those times?
Well, I think as well as that, we need to consider the fact that there would also need to be legal presence, which we rely on Mid-Kent Legal. So if we were to consider, for example, stop notices and temporary stop notices, more specifically, we would need backup from other departments as well. So it needs to be looked at in a long-term sort of frame, really, before I can really answer that and give you a definite answer.
I think Councillor Bonney wanted to come in on
Yeah.
one, and then I'll come back.
I'm sorry, Paul, but that is not the conversation that we've previously had. Prior to Kerry and Joanne turning up, when James Freeman was here, certainly there were instances, and I can think of some probably similar to James's thinking about, where, you know what's going to happen on bank holiday weekends, 4-day bank holiday weekends, and that is not the case. And I think, were assured that there would be some sort of service available on those areas. And I think Joanne should come in here because, A, we're having this meeting in public, so letting the world know. So, B, there is no option now. You have to provide a weekend service because we've just had this conversation in public. So as far as I'm concerned, that we had a really stiff conversation about this, I think, at an IAM meeting. So it's not good enough to say there's no service, I'm afraid.
Joanne?
Thank you. So to clarify the distinction between the two, if we follow the strategy and it says a particular course of action is the right course of action, and that can only or best takes place out of hours, we would ask the officers to do that. And we would ask legal if we need them to be there as well. So whilst the investigations officers work a regular Monday to Friday 34 hours, the same as the rest of us, if we're called upon for an evening meeting, if we're called upon to do something exceptionally outside of those hours, that would be an expectation of the role. But there is no on-call service in that if somebody can't phone us at 5 o'clock on a Saturday and say this is happening live, come to it now, as Paul says, that would then be prioritised first thing on the Monday morning. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Hampton and Councillor Baldock.
Just to finish up what I was saying, so that makes more sense to me. That's why I just wanted to check. But I think a lot of the comments in here seem to be, it's all about from parish councils how they deal with it, because sometimes when you get residents, they go direct to a parish council and they sort of try and explain that there's no obviously on-call service, whereas probably councillors being out there, and even us, we're there all the time and people will contact us. So I think maybe within the document we just need to be clear that whilst there's no 24-hour service call, investigations will take place out of hours where and when needed. Because if it's not clear in the document, there will still be parish councils asking these questions and saying what's happening and why isn't anyone going to do it. And I think as long as it's clear, it would help going forward.
Councillor Baldock.
Yeah, frankly, I don't see what's changed. Fact that we close the office at 2 o'clock on a Friday or something, this service has been going for years. So that in no way changes the fact that the office is closed at 2 o'clock rather than 5 o'clock or something. So this is just, well, I don't think we've agreed it. We've been assured the opposite. And I think to put in a public document, out of hours provision will be considered going forward, but this is not within current budgets, is an open door to people. I can't believe it's been worded like that. So I think that needs to be changed. Damage has probably already been done, but I think it's inaccurate, it's misleading, and it shouldn't have been in a public document.
Councillor Winkles.
Thank you, Chair. I brought this up before, actually. I'm going to bring it up again tonight. I've had 2 or 3 reports which I've reported as possible breaches of planning within the heritage area of Milton High Street. I get initial acknowledgement, but then it takes quite a long time to get a further reply or how they're progressing with the report. Thank you.
Kerry, do you want to come back on this?
Sorry, if you'd like to send me the details of those cases, I'll happily look into them for you.
Okay, I'll email them across.
Thank you.
Just coming back on the out of hours thing, are there breaches of planning which would be to the point of criminal, which would maybe the police should be contacted if the public thinks something's going on, and would it be worth actually identifying those in a document if the at the level that might involve the police? Just a thought.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, if, for example, a listed building's being demolished on a Saturday, Sunday, bank holiday, yes, that's a criminal offence. Any alterations to the fabric of a listed building, any curtilage listed buildings as well as a criminal offence. And although not strictly a police matter, that is dealt with by the local planning authority. And in all my time, thankfully, those sort of instances don't really occur. Other issues, there has been occasions where I've attended and served temporary stop notices on Saturday because we receive intelligence on a Friday before a bank holiday that there's an unauthorised mobile homes encampment about to set up in the field. And then, of course, it's within my team's best interest to go and deal with that. And I have gone out of my way to attend site on Saturday and Sunday and serve notices. And so we are extra vigilant around bank holidays, especially in the summer months as well, weekends, August. That's when it's sort of likely to have these incursions that may have long-lasting effects. But ordinarily, other breaches aren't criminal offences at all. They only become a criminal offence if we decide to serve an enforcement notice, of course, and it's not complied with. So it depends on the breach. So that there are criminal offences primarily if a listed building is being demolished or any curtilage buildings. Thank you.
Councillor Speed.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wondered why unauthorised pitching of caravans is category 2 with a response time of 3 working days as opposed to category 1, which is same day, because if you're not going to get there for 3 days, the encampment's likely to be fully entrenched, and surely that requires more immediate action.
Thank you for that. Yeah, unauthorised pitching of caravans, 3 working days. As you can see, we have 1 day, same day visits. That's irreversible, demolition of listed buildings, trees, protected trees, etc. 3 days is what's been agreed, but we will certainly consider putting that onto a same-day response. It all depends, really, what it's about. An unauthorised pitching of a caravan could well be an ancillary caravan that's used as overspill sleeping accommodation by the residents. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a gypsy and traveller caravan incursion. So we probably need to, clarify that based on your comments. Yep. Thank you.
Right, so if there are any further... Oh,
Sorry, one other thing that I've forgotten there, and it's on page 30, and it was a comment that said it will be very helpful if SWAL does include enforcement cases and case history to its planning portal, as indicated in the strategy, as this would help multiple reports to the public. I know the response there is that we do put it on the enforcement website, but that is only related, I think, to planning enforcement notices and not actually where cases are. And I think the comment there, which I probably can understand, is it's trying to avoid the multiple reports to the public. So it's not actually anywhere that anyone can go to see if an enforcement or breach has been reported. So it's that time between the report and actually anything happening. So I know we can get the notices, but it's not going to help with the in-between bit. And I think even with us, we could get access to that. And I know recently, speaking to Joanne, it was a legal issue with GDPR, I think, that we couldn't access that. So we ourselves haven't got any way that we can actually chase anything up now. And I think probably just within the document, again, maybe that's something that just needs to be clarified, that it's only the enforcement notices and not details of what's been reported and what hasn't. It would be good, probably not for this document, but going forward, it would be ideal to actually have somewhere we can find out what reports are going through and what the case is without having to bother officers.
Yes, thank you. There is actually an email that is sent out to Planning Chair and Vice Chair on a monthly basis, and it lists all the enforcement complaints that have been submitted during that month. And there is a 6-month list as well that goes out with an explanation as to why the cases are still on our books after 6 months, whether they're, sort of enforcement notice has been served, etc. So we can look at expanding that so it's sent to all councillors now going forward. It's sent out by our newly formed customer focus team, and an email was sent out yesterday for the months of July and August of all the cases.
Point of order, Chairman. It is not for officers to suggest new distribution lists. There is a reason that we do not distribute to everybody because of some confidentiality things. I don't think it is right that officers are just suddenly deciding to change what we do.
It was just a suggestion. Obviously, it's not my decision, being team leader of the planning investigations team, but we do occasionally get councillors asking how many complaints have you had in, etc., etc., and there is regular reports on the number of complaints. So I will discuss that with management and see what we can or can't do. Thank you.
Councillor Bonney.
Sorry. So it was different from the other one. I see, obviously, I agree with dumping of waste and that waste crime be dealt with the Environment Agency. Probably what we should distinguish is fly tipping is dealt with in hedgerows and on highways by us, isn't it? Because a lot of people get confused as to where they're supposed to report things.
Yes, that's right. Of course, fly tipping on public land on the highway is responsibility of another department, environmental. So
yeah, but we say waste
We can
crime is
put that
dealt with
what
by
we
the
don't
environment.
investigate.
Yeah.
Okay,
So I just sort of split
Thank
it out because,
absolutely.
and even for us, it's confusing because what constitutes Environment Agency versus Swale, but any clarity will help there.
Thank you. I'll get that changed.
Any further questions? I think we've covered everyone. Right, so subject to the comments that we've made, Councillor Baldock.
Yeah, I'd just like to make sure that in the minutes it does mention that page 7 will be changed, because I'm a bit fed up of things not happening as I thought they were.
But that you mean page 7 of the report? And just for clarity, the change that you wanted to see there?
To reflect the change in decision making that was that all members will be consulted on enforcement going forward.
Okay, I hope that's noted. Right, so we need a proposer for the party's recommendations on, so that's Councillor Baldock and seconder Councillor Winkless. Got there first in the direction I was looking, and could we have a show of hands for those in favour of sending these to P&R? That's unanimous, thank you. Right, so now we're moving on to the local development scheme update, and I assume that's Stuart.
Thank you, Chair. This latest local development scheme update is required to address members' requests to carry out additional work to inform the Regulation 18 version of the local plan consultation. So this work includes identifying additional sites in Sittingbourne for additional homes, identifying additional sites for rural older person housing, reviewing specific sites for densification, and reviewing draft existing HELA sites from the perspective of alternative transport solutions. So this LDS does not propose a change in the approach to consultation that was agreed by the Council on the 24th of July of this year. However, it does propose a 6-month extension to the timeframe to the Regulation 18 draft plan consultation. So this extension is required to allow officers time to carry out a call for sites exercise that as part of it the Council will be making clear that we are interested specifically in additional site options for Sittingbourne and rural older person housing. Once the call for sites exercise is closed, all accepted new sites will need to be assessed through the Council's HELA process. Alongside that work, officers will also be carrying out the other member requests as I've just set out. The LDS also proposed an extra 3 months between Regulation 18 and the 19 consultations. Whilst the existing timetable was, albeit tight, it was workable, but the government has extended the extension to plan making under the current system till December 2026, and allowing those extra 3 months will enable us to make sure that we've been very resilient in addressing the outputs of the Regulation 18 consultation. So as a result of these time extensions, the local plan work programme as presented states that there will be a Regulation 18 draft local plan consultation in April to June of next year, followed by a Regulation 19 consultation in October to December of next year, with submission of the plan in January to March of 2026. So members of this group are being asked to recommend to the Policy and Resources Committee the revised timetable for the Regulation 18 draft plan consultation and the Regulation 19 one. And members are also asked to recommend to P&R the updated local development scheme at Appendix 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. Councillor Gibson.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's a very sensible proposal. My question really is around the logistics of what this does to what P&R voted on, I'm going to say last week, but whenever that particular meeting was. So P&R narrowly voted to recommend to full council a scheme. Is that going to continue in the time frame it is currently set at, even though we're going to publicly approve something and then not consult on it for a significant number of months. And the thing we have agreed and may agree at council is not going to include the new sites that come forward from the call for sites. So just some clarity around that. And if you are looking for a steer, from my opinion, that seems silly, and we should probably not do that and wait till we have the call for sites completed and do it properly nearer the time we're going to consult on things. Thank you.
Joanne, do you want to come back on that one?
I'm happy to, thank you. Yeah. So agreeing the growth option allows officers to start work on some of the policies and some potential site allocations work. So I don't see an issue with that extended time frame. It wouldn't be unusual for other authorities to have similar time frames to that. So agreeing the settlement strategy, the growth option, is a distinct piece of work to agreeing the allocations that sit within that. So I think that's perfectly acceptable. Thank you.
Councillor Baldock.
Yeah. Publication of Regulation 18 draft local plan consultation. April is KCC elections, and I expect we normally get bogged down with PERDA during that. What is the process of the lead up to the Regulation 18 publication? I imagine it would have to come to PTP at some point. As I understand it, P&R couldn't do a Regulation 18. It doesn't need full council, or does it need full council to agree to a Regulation 18?
I thought it might need full council, but I'll be guided on that one.
Okay, because we have a scarcity of full councils. I think February is the budget. So given that March, we may have a meeting, so assuming we have a meeting in March, that is possible to get a Reg 18 out in April, but then I said, we'll be hit by PERDA. So I'm not sure of the time frames of meetings. That we used to have it, and I know that there has been one, but I'm just trying to work out how we would actually physically get, if it requires full council, and full council to agree one, how we get there, because we can call extra PTPs, we can call extraordinary full councils, but getting a Reg 18 through when you've only got maybe half a chamber for an extraordinary is a bit uncomfortable. So I'm a bit concerned at the fact that we could potentially run into PERDA with that one. And the adoption, there's nothing worse than adopting a new local plan 2 months before the elections take place, potentially getting a new administration who finds themselves lumbered with the previous administration's local plan and can do nothing about it. We felt very much like that in 2019. You can't withdraw a local plan. I know that we are the administration, so we have the advantage, but I feel uncomfortable about doing to others what was done to us and imposing a local plan about a month before an election. Just a comment.
Does anyone want to come back? Councillor Hunt.
This is on something different, is that right? Yeah. What do you want?
Yep. But if anyone's got to come back on Councillor Baldock, we can always take that in a moment. I just need to think hard on that one. But yeah, Councillor Hunt, carry on.
I mean, coming back on what Councillor Baldock said, the only thing I'd say is don't think it was stop thinking that you'd come in and do it. So don't think the local plan was lumbered on you because you didn't think it was going to come back in at that time. The comments I've got are just, I agree with with extending this and taking it forward. I do, for what Councillor Baldock said there, obviously there is probably seems to be some issues that do need to be looked at because that could impact it. I won't say it's what I said last time we discussed this. I thought it was going to need to be longer anyway, but it's better, I think, and I can understand the reasons why this, because the government again have come in and changed things, and but it's better to spend the time and do things right and get what we want in there. Just on, I wasn't here in August, but on page 37 we've just got some of the reasons why what we're going to do while more time is taken. And I just wonder, I know I say it a lot before, but some design work, if we've got some time, maybe that could be put in there, because I know that on here that we have got the design code borough-wide will be looked at. But it will be sometime after the review is done. But surely it'd be better doing something when we can actually put it into Reg 18, Reg 19 with design. So that would just be good if something can be looked at. And there's just a couple of points on things that we're looking at. Page 55. On the appendix there, some of the things we're looking at. 34, the Swale Highway model. We've got on there that no further action is taken, but is that right? Because surely we should be looking at the Swale, the highway models, a little bit more detail. So I would have thought there's more work to be done there, especially because that was done a while ago. And also page 58, is that 58 or 56? 56. We've got landscape character assessment, 42, not yet started. It's something that's desirable. But I think maybe that could be looked at in more detail, because surely the findings from a local character assessment could be used in exceptional circumstances, or at least having some of that information will be useful when we're deciding the allocations of what should go forward. So there's maybe a couple of things there that we could be looking at if we have got more time.
Natalie, did you want to comment at all on the time that might be required for some of those items and what we've got?
Yeah, just in terms of the design code, obviously I think, as we've said before, the design codes that have been done under the sort of front runner schemes at neighbouring councils and elsewhere have been coming out at about £140,000–150,000. So it's budget as well as time. I think they've been coming out at about 18 months to 2 years. So it's the time, and because you have to do 3 different stages of consultation, so it's very resource intensive. So that's why it has been put back. Obviously design will still be a key part of the local plan. We have started looking at the design policies with our design officer to sort of boost those and to make sure they are robust. So it's not something that won't be within the local plan, but it isn't within our current work programme as it is. I mean, obviously it's something we could have a look at. I don't think it's in the corporate plan for this year, or the the work programme. So that is something we could take away. Highways, we will be doing more modelling, obviously. As you know, we model every highway scenario going. So that is something that we're doing. And the landscape character assessment is due to start, I think. Oh yeah, so that becoming a latest. But obviously we've got quite a lot of quite recent landscape character assessment work, and we will do some bespoke landscape work for depending on which allocations members choose. You know, if they're quite large scale pieces of allocations, obviously we would see if we needed to do some bespoke landscape work for those certain areas. But obviously the extensions that we're proposing is for those 4 bits of work. If we add extra bits of work on, that would take extra time and resources.
Councillor Speed.
Thank you, Chairman. I was a bit surprised to hear at our last meeting that we don't proactively go out and look for sites. We wait for sites to come to us. So I'm certainly in favour of taking this more proactive approach, particularly as we're struggling to come up with enough sites. My concern is that if we build yet more delay into this local plan process, do we make ourselves even more vulnerable to developers coming up with speculative applications and saying, well, you know, your plan is out of date, so this has to be approved. I'm thinking in particular of the application we're considering at Planning Committee in November, which is for, well, across 2 applications, it's 8,400 homes, which is actually a bigger figure than the land we're trying to allocate for houses, for new houses. And Reg 18 was due to be Q4 this year. If it's not going to be Q2 until Q2 2025, I mean, obviously, we don't know how the Planning Committee is going to determine that, but if, for example, it were to be determined by a planning inspector, the appeal could potentially have taken place before we've even got to a Reg 18 stage. So would this leave us vulnerable to having a large number of houses being approved in an area that is not necessarily where we want them to be? So that is my main concern about, because we've already delayed this process quite a bit. I'm concerned about building yet more delay into it. Thank you.
I think Councillor Baldock, you're next.
Yeah, partly in response to Councillor Speeder, I think the problem is there's nowhere that we all agree would be suitable for, and wonderful for housing. Sites that come forward on a as and when basis will continue to do so, because we're estimating 2,000 as windfall sites, which obviously isn't as big as the one you're alluding to, but it still means that there are going to be sites coming forward. So, and any site that does come forward and that gets imposed upon us, such as the Gladman site, east of Sittingbourne, it does come off our target. So given that there aren't really many wonderful places to put houses, anywhere feels bad. So on that basis, yeah, we want to get this done, but I don't think we're in any worse position having things imposed on us than choosing to have things imposed on us, because there are no good solutions. With regards to Councillor Hunt's design, surely it shouldn't be beyond this group to sit in a room with different proposals, different ideas, and put forward a range of suggestions that we think would represent good design. If there are already studies that are done that we could look at, if there are examples that people want to put forward. Yeah, it just seems to me that we're always doing the expensive option, getting consultants in, or getting reports done for us, which actually might not be much better. We might not like much more than was there in the first place. So members having an input into design, members being able to contribute to what they would like the imposed housing to look like, seems to me a reasonable way forward. I'm surely we can put that together.
Natalie, did you want to come back on the process involved there?
Sorry. Yes, I think, well, design code is part of the national planning guidance, so it's something that we do need to do. You know, it's quite a complicated process because it's design coding for the whole. You can do it for the whole borough, parts of the borough. So it's something that is quite a prescribed process. Obviously, members would be involved, they'd be consulted on through that process. So it is something that does need to be led by someone. It doesn't have to be a consultancy, but it isn't particularly something that could just be done, you know, as a sort of one-off workshop with members. As I said, the policies within the plan that we've got on design, you know, we discussed them at I can't remember when it was now, a couple of PTPs ago, and we've been looking at them. So those will be robust and looking at design for the borough. But in terms of the design code, that is something that is in national policy that is being promoted. So it is quite a standard process of looking at it that we would need to follow so that it could then be used in planning decisions to have that weight behind it.
Councillor Bonney.
Thanks. And so picking up on the other two councillors' points, I agree. I was always reluctant that we put off the design code element. I think we would agree there's a number of estates where design has been pretty abominable, dreadful designs, dreadful layouts, some simple stuff I think that Alistair, you and I were talking about, you know, whether it's north, south facing, all those sorts of issues around how things are laid out, but also our local materials, etc. I think we all despair at some of the, I don't know, the blueprint designs that are used up and down the country that get replicated around a borough that don't reflect actually the borough. And I think I'm really reluctant to delay things, I have to say, because we've got an issue around 5-year supply. We're at the mercy of whatever comes along, quite frankly. We're delaying it to try and find more sites. And I think all the time we sit there with a design code that we don't have a design code. There's nothing that we can use or adopt. And then we're going to do piecemeal bits of work. And it's a bit like the landscape character reports or assessment in here. We're going to do bits of bespoke work here, there and everywhere. It's going to become very disjointed. I'd rather we did it properly and at the outset and it's informed. And presumably, because we're going through so many stages of consultation, that we could bake that effectively into those consultation steps. If we're consulting at a Reg 18, can we not be consulting on the design code at the same time as part of that and at the Reg 19 so that they all come together? Because otherwise we're going to be, you know, we're going to have all, I mean, this is where we lose the public, quite frankly, and this is the total apathy that we have from the public is, well, it's going to happen, it's going to get built, and what's the point of putting into it? So if we're going to come out with a myriad of different consultations for different bits, I'm just wondering if we can wrap some of this together and do it all in one go. We're going to have to spend the money on a design code. So whether it's next year or the year after, it needs to be done. The fact that we're delaying it effectively opens the window that it can be done alongside the local plan consultations for Reg 18 and 19. So I have to say I'm pretty, I don't know, despondent that we're looking at putting off the Reg 18 in terms of timing. I'd feel more comfortable if we were bringing forward the landscape character stuff and the design code.
Is that a proposal to amend the...
Yes.
Is there a seconder? I don't know whether we need to think about the budgetary implications, but that may be for Resources Committee to consider. Okay, so we've got a proposal from a seconder to consider introducing the design code alongside it. Sorry, Councillor Ball, do you want to?
Yeah, I'd support that because I think but as long as it means that members have a real involvement in it and the chance to actually say what we want the place to look like. I think that is essential because, as Councillor Bonney said, we've seen some hideous stuff going up. We've got to live with this imposed housing. We want to make it look as decent as possible, and I think it's cross-chamber that we want to actually have some input into it.
So, with proposal and second, are there any those in favour of requesting Policy and Resources to look at a design code alongside the local plan and landscape character assessment. Okay, we'll have to see whether they'll pay for it.
Thank you. So the recommendations from today's meeting would normally go to the next P&R on the 16th. Thinking out loud, do we want to delay that so officers have got time to work out how we could mesh those two timescales together? Because if that potentially means a 3-month delay somewhere within the process to allow the two consultations to happen simultaneously, I think what I'm saying is that might revise the local development scheme timescales that we would need to propose. So do we want to hold back on this going to P&R for a month?
Right, so Councillor Palmer and Councillor Hunt, then Councillor Hunt.
No, I think if it's, you say the 16th, so that's 16th of October, if it's ready, even if it's 3 or 4 days before, with the agreement of the chair, it could always be put in as a special circumstances and as an urgent item. So I would say if it's ready, then it should go as early as possible, and it saves any further time delay. Thank you.
Councillor Hunt.
I agree with that, but I'd also say that if it is delayed, it's not a massive issue, because there seems to be, with the PERDA and everything else, maybe more stuff that needs to be looked at anyway. So if it can all be done and done in there and it's an urgent item, but if it does take more time, it's better to get it all done properly and know that we can get everything in there and that you're not going to hit PERDA and everything else. So if there is a delay of it, and then it is what it is.
Right, so I'm just trying to... the question that you were asking, Joanne, was that which P&R we would want to recommend this to, is that right? Or whether should we go for the next one, which is 16th of October, is that correct? But, yeah, I suppose any LDS... we're trying to set the time frame for the plan at present, aren't we? That can be altered again should things like PERDA come along and cause problems, but if possible, the feeling from this group is that given the delay and the fact that the design code is something that has to be done anyway, this is the opportunity to merge those together, which whatever other factors may cause delays, we'd still like it to happen together, if possible. Okay. Councillor Gibson.
I think I'm entirely relaxed about the timing. It's delayed. It is what it is. Whether it's November or October, I'm relatively relaxed about when we shake the magic money tree and see what does or doesn't fall out. That's fine. My question is relating to the call for sites and the process around that. So does that process involve going out to our existing sites? Because I know I previously expressed some concerns about some of the sites that we have listed as viable, which I do not believe to be viable, one of which has changed owner and one of which I know the owner and they have made very clear it is not an available site. So I'm just checking if that's part of the process, so that we, whilst the list hopefully grows, of course, with people coming forward with sites, it can also shrink. Is that a possibility? Thank you.
No, we will go out to all the people that have already put sites in, because often they're people that represent lots of different landowners, or they might have just bought a new field last week or something. So no, we're going out to as many people as we can. You know, we always do go out quite proactively to all the different landowners, land agents, land owners, all land people. So yes, we will go out to all the people already on our database, and we're sort of looking to try and go out to more people as well. We're going to use the business database from our economic development team that do the business newsletter. So we're looking at different ways to get to more people, but yeah, definitely the people we've got existing. So they could reply and say, oh, not available anymore, or oh yes, I've got the site next door as well now. So yeah.
I think I had Councillor Hunt down for another question, or no, you're done? Or Councillor Speed?
Going back to the point I made earlier, could I, through you, Chair, ask for a response from officers as to whether building in another 9-month delay might make us more vulnerable to large-scale developments ending up being approved that might not have ended up in the plan if the plan had come first?
Kerry, can I ask you to respond on that one?
Thank you. In terms of how we'd consider an application, we'd have to consider the local plan that we have in front of us. In this case, it'd be the 2017 local plan and the consistency that the policies in that have with the National Planning Policy Framework. And from there, we'd attach weight to different policies. But I think the biggest issue that we have at the moment is the 5-year supply position, because that results in the policies having less weight, particularly those spatial policies around where development is located. So there'll always be a risk while we don't have a 5-year supply and the local plan is more than 5 years old, that, you know, we could potentially be more susceptible to that type of development. Oh yeah, thank you. And also, as we progress through the Regulation 18 and 19 process, we'll be able to attach weight to the policies within the emerging local plan as well, based on unresolved objections.
Councillor Baldock.
Yeah, just checking when we do go out to these same old people that we always go to. The existing allocations, are we seeing if they would consider greater densification at the same time?
We've got meetings sort of the rest of this week looking at the call for sites and exactly what we're going to ask, so that's something yeah, we could look at.
If I could, Chair, and that was something that the last PTP did indicate we would want to look at, so I would expect that that would be part of that conversation, because
I think it is listed in the purpose of the delay, so I would, if we recommend this, then I think I would assume that densification is included. Councillor Bonney.
In terms of the list we go out to, obviously there's the usual suspects, and we're going to use the Swell Means Business Database, which is great. Do we also go out to housing associations specifically as a target organ, or at the least the list of people within the housing sphere?
Yes, we do. So it's everyone that's signed up for our objective database. We have a slight issue that it is smaller than it used to be because of GDPR. They all had to agree to stay on the list. So obviously we can't just, but we could liaise with our housing colleagues and see if they have suggestions of people to add. But yeah, we have quite a weird and wonderful array of people on the list that we do send it to. I think you'd be quite surprised who it does go to. But yeah, we will liaise with housing.
Okey cokes. And the charity sector, presumably. Okay, cool.
And adding to the weird and wonderful, I think there was mention at the last meeting about consulting members, whether they had any contributions to make. So, yeah. Sites that would be worth people approaching, I think. But in terms of weird and wonderful, I was thinking just the members. But okay, so the proposal is to recommend to Policy and Resources this revised timetable with the amendments to consider the design code and landscape survey alongside this, and yeah, the updated development scheme appendix 1 including the revised timetable. Do you have a proposer for that? Councillor Baldock and seconder Councillor Palmer. Okay, so those in favour? And those against? So I think that's carried forward. No objection noted. Thank you. So next we have the Statement of Community Involvement, an update for the emerging local plan. That's Natalie.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. So the purpose of this report is to present the draft Statement of Community Involvement update for public consultation. So a Statement of Community Involvement sets out how consultation will be carried out on all planning matters, including planning applications, planning policy documents and enforcement. So the Council's current Statement of Community Involvement was published in 2018, so it is in need of a refresh. So the draft SCI update reflects the latest guidance and legislation and uses more up-to-date terminology and the current names for organisations, and it follows the relevant legislation. So the document specifies what consultation the Council must do to meet the requirements of the legislation by listing what the Council will do, but then it also says what it may do if we want to go further than required in certain circumstances. So an SCI sets out ways the Council can encourage participation in consultations on planning matters, including engaging hard-to-reach groups. So that's such as young people, gypsy and traveller groups, disabled people. So the document can be used to help to explain to people how they can get involved with the different types of planning documents that the Council deals with and produces. So the Statement of Community Involvement does not, however, cover operational matters on planning issues. So it doesn't commit to things like specific timeframes to publish responses on planning applications once received. If it is made too specific and stringent, then it opens the Council up later to I can't say that word, judicial reviews, sorry, if what is promised is then not being able to delivered. So the proposal is to publish the new updated SCI document for consultation later this year. So the recommendations tonight are that members discuss and note the Statement of Community Involvement, and that you recommend to Policy and Resources Committee that the Statement of Community Involvement is published for public consultation later this year. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Gibson.
Thank you, Chair. Only really, well, it's a repeated point throughout the document, really, that there are a number of instances where the council may include things that are zero cost and relatively little staff time. So I agree it is probably correct to put them in the may bit, but it seems to me if we are attempting to reach as many people as possible, including young people, all of the digital options, which are broadly all filed in the may, not the will, and have zero cost to the council. We already have Facebook. We are already running a website. Those things already exist. It seems to me that they are easy wins to get through, and including press releases as well. There's a number of references. Pretty much every will and may features digital in the may, and it seems to me that as that's pretty easy and cheap, we should look to perhaps strengthen our commitment to that bit of may. I agree it's sensible to have it not open to judicial challenge, because we might have a team member off sick and a press release can't go out, and that's these things do happen. But I think we should be aiming for as the standard that we do those things at every possible opportunity. Thank you.
Councillor Baldock.
Yeah, I agree. I've got it dog-eared. I can find no reason why any of these mays are not wills under 4.11, 4.12. I think we will make paper copies available at main libraries. We always do, and we should do. We should produce further publicity such as posters and leaflets or postcards, because we want people to know, we want people to take part. Why we haven't got published a press notice in a local newspaper as a will, we clearly should, and we will undertake briefings with town and parish council and other stakeholders online or in person. I don't see why any of those are mays. It just looks cheap, and I'm sure it's going to lead us to complaints. So I would remove 4.12 and put it all under 4.11. There is another issue, but I don't know if you want to come back to that after you've dealt with that one.
Okay, is there any comment on that particular point? Councillor Gibson?
Well, I don't disagree with Councillor Baldock. In an ideal world, I think that would be nice. My point really was that all of the digital things are free, so we should commit to doing those things. Making a paper copy of, for the example we were given recently was to make a paper copy of the Duchy of Cornwall application in Faversham would have cost more than £1,000 to print all of the paperwork required of that. So it was entirely right that Faversham Town Council did not do that. But if we are committing ourselves to do that for every significant application, that is a major budgetary commitment that I don't think we would want to leave ourselves open to challenge on. So that's my view on that. The digital stuff I would love to see as a will, not a may. The stuff that has a budgetary implication, which is broadly all the printing, I'm comfortable with it remaining a may, though I agree with Councillor Baldock, it would be lovely if we did it, and we mostly do, so we should keep doing it if we can.
I think the point that in 412, this is, I think, specific to the submission plan publication rather than spread more generally, but that particular one that Councillor Baldock is referring to, removing that line, is just for the main submission local copy of the local plan. Is that the point you were coming back to, Councillor Baldock?
Absolutely, yes. Not everything.
So devil's advocate here, but if you put in will, and then, for instance, Facebook goes down or a main server goes down, and for whatever reason in that time frame that we are consulting in, then we leave ourselves open to judicial review, and that can have a significant impact. I would say that if our lawyers have crawled all over this and put wills and maybes in the right places, we know that's what we want to achieve, and the officers will be aware of that. But I wouldn't want to leave us in a position where, just because of a technicality that was out of our control, so you might say it's nil cost, but actually we're reliant on a third-party server or a third-party service delivery company, and for whatever reason it goes down, then we're stuffed. And I don't think that really should fall back to the council in that instance. So I would leave them where they are.
Councillor Palmer?
I'm sure legal could come up with some suitable sort of disclaimer. We will advertise on social media. However, if it says if it goes down or it's inaccessible for a number of period of time, we can't, we're not responsible for that. So there's ways you can put in there that where it doesn't lead to an excessive cost to the council, then I think we should be saying we will do it rather than maybe. The public will look at that and saying, well, they're not going to do anything. Who decides the maybe? That's the other question.
Councillor Baldock.
I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be reading here. Under 4.10, 11, 12, I can read nothing about social media. I can read nothing about anything that might go down other than the council website. And I think legally we're required to put a notice on there. The mays are paper copies of the proposed submission plan at main libraries. Further publicity such as posters, leaflets or postcards, which is a bit vague. Publish a press notice in a local newspaper. Well, that doesn't require anything other than a letter to the newspaper telling them. And undertake briefings with town and parish councils and other stakeholders, either online or in person. So the bit I'm talking about, that I'm proposing, doesn't relate to this. I mean, maybe another bit. 4.15, that may, that's fine. But I'm talking about 412, and it's 412 I think I would like to see changed to wills. 415s just seem like extra bits.
Okay, so I think that could be noted. I think the we will allow the legal people to the thing, but I think that's a reasonable. I don't think there's anything in 412. I would agree that is subject to anything else. I think that would be reasonable, subject to the agreement to suggest that one is taken out unless there's any objections. Joe?
Would a potential compromise be the council intends to? So stronger than may, but not absolutely definitely will, if we were to change the wording?
I think that's just overcomplicating it. Why would we not? I can see there's going to end up being an argument here about whether or not we put a paper copy into a library. And it'll be, oh, we might do, we intend to, but we didn't commit to. No, we need to do it.
We've got libraries.
Where we've got libraries, yeah.
Well, that's...
And the other stuff, yeah, the other stuff is very vague. So we will produce further publicity as posters, leaflets, and postcards. Not very restrictive. Press notice in a local newspaper. Why the heck wouldn't we?
Yeah, but what if they don't publish it? So we put the notice in, and for some reason that is not published.
Well, we've got 6 weeks to get it in. And I think we have to undertake briefings with town and parish councils. I could see no reason to not have these as will. Because all you're going to end up with is saying, oh, well, we only said maybe. I think we're going to get a load of hit back on this. Why only maybe? Well, I'll move that we do it, and then we can just vote on it and decide one way or the other.
Okay, do you have a seconder? Okay, those in favour, this is specifically about just on the submission plan publication, not any other areas, that the 4 points after 412 will be things that we will commit to do as part of that submission plan process, and we're not talking about anything else. All those in favour? Those against? And abstentions? So we've asked to do that one. But I don't. Sorry, Councillor Gibson.
Just to say, I think Joanne's compromise works very well for the rest of them, where that accurately covers that we should do those 3 things, and if something goes wrong, we're not liable for them. But that's broadly fine. So I think changing all the other mays to intends would satisfy me anyway. Thank you.
Are members happy to take that as a recommendation? Yeah. Okay. Councillor Baldock.
Yeah, one other little niggly bit. 3.12. At the time of publishing the SCI, Spelborough Council was yet to implement SIL. Well, I thought we'd made a decision that we weren't going to implement it. The way that's worded is like, oh, we're going to, but we haven't got round to it yet. Which I don't think is accurate. We haven't. This makes it look like we've made a decision, but we're going to implement it, but we haven't got round to it. So, I think that the wording of that needs to be changed.
Okay, we can look at a different wording for that, just that's a bit more accurate.
Lovely.
Councillor Hunt.
There's a few things I think we could be doing more, and I'm not going to comment on things now because the main reason for this is to get it out to consultation, so comments can come at a later date. But I do just think that in 21, I think it was Winchester Council won awards for some of the work that they did. And I think there's more we can probably do with when we are doing these briefings with town and parish councils and other stakeholders. I think there's more that we can do with the public to try and get people involved and have maybe more workshops out there and get people along and speak to local people. But I'll point out some of those things as we go along. But Winchester Council was a good one that they really did a lot to get a lot of people involved, and that's the main thing we want to do. Whether there's time to do these things now is another matter, but I think there's more that could be looked at.
Councillor Palmer.
Yeah, Councillor Hunt makes a good point that it's going out for consultation and we can see what comes back, but there are words in there like 7.22, where required, by law, the council will either display a planning notice on or near the application site, or post letters to neighbours adjoining the application site. And sometimes neighbours who don't get letters, even when they adjoin the application site, get most frustrated. So, you know, maybe certainly on, and you may have to define a large application, or say on larger applications. But again, it's words, isn't it? But it would be interesting to see what comes back in the consultation if members of the public and parish councils pick up the same thing. 7.19, liaise with town and parish councils where relevant. Well, who decides what's relevant? Because if the parish council wanted it to have some liaison about it, they would think it's relevant. Whereas if the planning officer said, no, I don't think it's relevant, it's an awkward one, isn't it? Because we've made a commitment, we're relevant, but what does that mean to anyone? Thank you.
Does that mean where they exist? Or is that perhaps that's something to clarify? So it's not where relevant to the planning application, but where relevant to the fact that there is a parish. Perhaps that needs to be clarified then. Councillor Bonney.
Yeah, I'm glad he's picked that up. Under where there's a planning application, I think the biggest set of complaints that I've had over the last year is that neighbours aren't getting letters where there's a planning application, or even on small household ones, and actually that is causing a major headache because neighbours are finding things out too late and the decision's already been made because not everybody reads those notices. I think that's the one you're going to get one of the biggest backlashes on, quite honestly, and it's now starting to form the part of the largest load of casework is around where neighbours haven't been consulted. And actually, I would say that that's now causing major neighbourly issues because had they been engaged early in the process and understood that, rather than having to look on a lamppost down a road, which they don't all do, nobody reads the notices. Anyone who's on a parish council will know that. You can write Santa's Christmas list in there and no one would read it. So, yeah, I think that's got to be changed. I think even all householder applications need to notify the neighbours.
Councillor Baldock.
We've discussed this several times. Well, I've discussed it several times with officers, trying to get the right balance between who you notify, and it is really hard to put specific rules down. You know, if you do it within a 100-metre radius, you get the backs of some properties that aren't interested and the fronts of some properties that may be. If you use numbers, you know, if you use 10 nearest properties without into sticks, that could be a couple of miles away, some of them. It is really hard to get specific guidelines as to who should expect to get a notification. And you know, you say you want to leave it to the planning officer's discretion, but then they're going to get into trouble as soon as, you know, they say, well, six properties down should get a notification, and it's like, well, why have you only done 6 there and you did 7 in this one? You know, because they were closer together. You know, you can't get consistency on it, and wherever you draw the line, the next person thinks they should have been informed. It's hard to make people read notices, but we aren't there to provide for people who won't read notices. We're there to provide for people who want to and go to their library and read things because they can't do it digitally. But we, you know, if people aren't going to read notices that are on a lamppost, we can't drip feed them everything on a planning application because, I'll say, there is no way of getting consistency. I have thought about this for quite a few months on how I would like to see this worded, and I haven't been able to. You just go around in circles, and if somebody else has got a way of doing it, I'd love to hear it, and I'd be happy to support one that works. But I just think this is one of those things that you can't regularise.
Any further comments? No? Good. Okay.
Yeah, so actually, because lampposts are few and far between in the rural areas, and people often only read what's put through their door.
Come on, bus stop. Oh, no.
We don't have any bus stops, we don't have any lampposts, and we don't have any street lights, but we pay the same council tax as those that live in the town. So I think we feel a bit grieved.
Councillor Speed.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to draw attention to 2.5, where it talks about designing engagement exercises to be accessible and making information available that is appropriate and understandable. And also on page 75, clause 4.7, hold engagement events to support consultations in person and or online, engage with town and parish councils and other stakeholders through meetings, workshops and forums, issue information through press releases, newsletters, social media, etc. This is really important. The last Reg 18, the engagement felt very passive. It was kind of, here's a 1,000-page document, off you go and read it. People don't have the time or interest or mindset to plough through 1,000 pages of dense language. So I think we need to be much more proactive getting out there and explaining in layman's terms what the local plan means. And that includes things like big full-scale size maps so people can see exactly where the housing and employment land would go. Maps really bring it to life. So I would like to see maps added to the list of press releases, newsletters and social media. And I also think where we talk about engaging with town and parish councils, I'd like to see added proactively engage with town and parish councils, because I think proactive engagement is the key, not waiting to be asked to attend a meeting, which is what happened last time.
Councillor Hunt.
Thanks. One, just coming back on the who's notified of planning application, it just seems to me that if there's a certain level of, say someone's having an extension, you do so many metres of that application. If it's a house that's being built or two houses, you go for so many more metres in an application. That seems to be a sensible way of doing it. You can quite easily then pick up an area around who's going to be closest to that property and give them consultation notices. Just seems to make sense.
Councillor, don't think it's specified in this document as to how the distances are there. I haven't spotted it.
No, I don't think the distances are in the document. In terms of the legal requirement, we're required to notify adjoining landowners, and if we don't know who the landowner is, that's when we'll put up a site notice, obviously providing it's not in a conservation area affecting the settled listed building and not major development as well.
Councillor Bonney.
Yeah, so on making planning applications and supporting documentation on the website, I think it's come to my attention because of one of the substantial planning applications that's in, is the way that's then documented on the portal. So you'll have the main application with all the documents and comments, and then separately has been posted where we've consulted the neighbouring authority as a separate application, which is unbelievably confusing to members of the public who look at that and think, well, there's no other supporting documents behind it. So in this case, we are consulting with Maidstone Borough Council. And it looks like where there's 2 substantial planning applications, there's actually 4, and then you've got separate to that EIAs. And I think if we're asking the public to read and understand an application, they've got to be able to easily find the application and the consultations that are going on, and not to have them separately listed. So I think it's a matter of clarity and people being able to post comment in the right place.
come back on that one, or is it?
I mean, in terms of how the website's laid out, that's something that we can look into, but it's probably a bit more operational than the statement of community involvement, but I'll happily take a look at it.
And Councillor Baldock.
Yeah, and this is partly in response to Councillor Speed's comments about the last Reg 18. I do think it's down to ward members to ensure that their residents are aware of proposals, especially proposals that are going to affect or likely to affect them. That may not have happened as well as everybody liked in the past, but there are some wards that will be less affected than others, some parishes less affected than others. They do not, there's no benefit in bombarding every parish with everything when some of them aren't really going to be affected. It is down to ward members to go to their parishes, to talk to residents, let them know that there are potential developments in their area, let them know what's likely to be the impact. I just think ward members need to shoulder a lot more of the getting info out on this sort of thing.
I don't think we're proposing to put that in the document. Okay, so if perhaps we can move to proposal and second for the recommendations. We've got Councillor Bonney proposing, Councillor Palmer seconding, as amended with removing of that 412. Sorry, and the SIL. As comments, with comments noted as we've gone along, as I'm sure there have been. Right, so those in favour? Right, on we go. Right, finally the agricultural land report. Now, Natalie's doing this one.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to present the Agricultural Land Report Stage 1 baseline information. So as part of the local plan review, it's obviously very important to understand what resources Swale has in terms of agricultural land. So this report is very factual. It just looks at how much high-grade agricultural land, which is known as best and most versatile land, is in Swale and where, and it considers the potential implications of this for the local plan review. So the Stage 2 report, which will be coming soonish, will be published at a later date, which will look at the agricultural land grade of potential site allocations once those have been selected, so that any scale of potential loss of the best and most versatile land can be understood. So the proposal is to publish this agricultural land report Stage 1, baseline information, within the next sort of couple of months to form part of the Council's local plan review evidence base. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Baldock.
Yeah, I mean, this may be in the document. I haven't seen it, but I think it would be, if it's not, I think it'd be useful to say what percentage of the national best versatile land, agricultural land, is in the borough. Because we know that, I'll say it maybe, I couldn't see it, but we know that something like 95% of the top grade agricultural land is in Swale, or actually maybe not quite that high, but it's in the not top 95% of quality land. I think that'd be a useful thing to put in there.
Yep, we can see if we can find that out and add it in if we can.
Is it top 5 points?
Councillor Gibson.
I think that'd be very helpful. My only question, really, which I don't think this is necessary, putting this to consideration is not necessarily part of that, but it might feature in a later report, is there any way for us to differentiate in our plan making within the best and most valuable bracket? So it's obviously the best and most valuable bracket exists and it's 1, 2 and 3A, but would we be able to, or are we legally able to separate those so we could choose to set a policy that was, we recognise we're going to have to build on some best and most valuable, but wherever possible we will prioritise 2 and 3A as an example. Is that a thing we're allowed to do recognising that this report isn't the way to do that, but it's just spurred me to think about it. Thank you.
Natalie, would you like to come up?
I mean, national policy always puts best and most versatile, lumps the top ones together, so it's not something that tends to be done. I suppose you could put that potentially as your own category. It's something I think we'll just have to take some advice on, just to check that you could legally do that, and that's something we could take through a local plan inquiry.
I don't think I'm not sure I'd support that.
One question I've got is that the map differentiates grade 1 to grade 3, but the best and most versatile is grade 3A, and so is there a way of differentiating to the two grade 3, because that is a distinction that seems to be being made in the report. My other question is there any, I couldn't see it obviously, but any reference as to when these assessments were made, and sort of reference documents for this, because I think things have, my understanding is some of these gradings are really quite old.
Yes, some of the gradings are quite old, but we rely on DEFRA data, Department of Agriculture and Farming data, which is the government data, and that is the most up-to-date they have. So unless it has changed, they won't have updated their data. So they might look quite old, but that is the most up-to-date data that we hold.
Is it possible to actually put in the report when that data was actually derived from? Just, I think, for clarity.
Yep, I will add it.
And the 3A distinction, is that on the maps?
Yes, I will double check. I know this was taken off the national mapping database, so that is what is provided, but I will ask our mapping team if that's something they can provide. But this was taken off. It's something called Magic Maps, which is publicly available to everyone, where you can get a lot of these designations. And that is what is provided, interestingly, but I will look into that for you.
Chair, it actually says under 4.1 that the pre-1988 data does not distinguish between 3A and 3B, and that DEFRA data is pre-1988, isn't it? So, I mean, you wouldn't expect it to change. It is what it is. So,
unless it's been exhausted over the years by...
Well, quite, but then I think you'd argue it's a bit like landscapes, isn't it, where we know they've deliberately run them down and deteriorated them for specific reasons of trying to develop.
Okay, any other comments? Or I think this is a report for noting, I think, is that right?
Yes.
So, we've discussed and noted. Yeah, thank you. And I think that brings us to the end of the meeting. Close at 8:40.